Shalom everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel Healing Victors. I'm exhorting from Judges chapter 11 verse 1 to 11, a Bible passage that entails the story of Jephthah, a mighty man of war. In Judges chapter 11 verse 1, we learn that Jephthah was a mighty man of war who was conceived through prostitution, and his father's name was Gilead in Israel. Gilead was a married man when he committed adultery with a harlot who bore him Jephthah. Meanwhile, Gilead's wife bore him sons, and when they grew up, they extruded Jephthah from their family and said to him, "You won't inherit our father's house because you belong to another woman." This was such a dichotomous family. Jephthah's siblings didn't have to seclude him from his family inheritance just because he was a child of adultery. It saddens me to see that they denied him equal opportunities and inheritance that he was actually entitled to because of the way he was conceived. Surprisingly enough also is the fact that his father, Gilead, never stood up and defended him when his brothers were extruding him from their family. This is a perfect example of a dichotomous family, as well as a dysfunctional family that is causing children in our generation to suffer from abandonment and rejection issues. Abandonment and family dysfunction are among other social issues that are affecting our communities today. It's causing children to become rebellious and suicidal. I wonder what had happened to Jephthah after being kicked out of the family by his step-siblings without his father's defense. Children who are abandoned, just like Jephthah, are most likely to suffer from mental health illnesses such as depression, anxiety, drug addiction, behavioral problems, as well as experiencing suicidal ideation. Abandoned children are forced to grow up so fast and fend for themselves and carry burdens that they never asked for. The lack of safety and social security causes these abandoned children to suffer from a social identity, as well as losing trust for adults and other people in the community. Verse 3 reveals that Jephthah fled from his brothers and went to live in the land of Tob by himself with the outlaws who joined him. So he most likely lived in the wilderness. I can only imagine how devastating his journey must have been. Parents, if you're going to have a child and you're not ready to take responsibility, please think of not procreating before you can assume your responsibility. Verse 4, it says that after a while, the Ammonites started fighting against Israel. So when the Ammonites were creating war, provoking war with the Israelites, the elders of Gilead went to get Jephthah out of the land of Tob, and they say to him, "Come and be our chief commander, that we might fight with the children of Ammon." This right here confirms that we serve a God who never abandons nor forgets his children. He's the father to the fatherless. As written in Deuteronomy chapter 10 verse 18, that he executes justice for the fatherless and the widow, and loves the sojourner, the helpless, and the hopeless, giving him food and clothing. The Lord our God provided for Jephthah, even when he was extricated from his family. God will make your enemies your footstool, as revealed to King David in Psalm chapter 110 verse 1. And he spoke to King David and said, "Sit in the place of honor at my right hand until I humble your enemies, making them a footstool under your feet." God made Jephthah's siblings his footstool because they came begging for help from him, so they could, after singling him out because he was conceived through prostitution, they had secluded him from their family. However, they recognized the mighty strength that he was anointed with at birth, because Jephthah was anointed as a mighty man of war, and he was consecrated by God in his mother's womb. As written in Jeremiah chapter 1 verse 4 to 5, that God says he knew us before we were born. He consecrated us as kings, as prophets, as evangelists in our mother's wombs. This was a special gift that Jephthah had and his step-siblings lacked. And they understood that the battle with the the Ammonites could only be overthrown with the strength and the help of Jephthah. As a result, they humbled themselves and allowed him to be chief commander. Verse 7 it says that Jephthah said to the elders of Gilead. That's when he actually started giving them orders and expectations. Jephthah said to the elders of Gilead, "Didn't you hate me and drive me out of my father's house? Why have you come to me now in your time of distress?" They say to him, We've come to you because only you can fight for us. Therefore, they say, therefore we have turned again to you now that you go with us and fight with the Ammonites. You will be our head over all the inhabitants of Gilead. In Joel chapter 2 verse 25, God promises to restore all that has been stolen from us. God restored all that was taken away from Jephthah, from his step siblings, all that inheritance that he had been deprived of. God just restored it for him. That's why they ended up giving him the position of leadership. That something that they didn't want him to have because of the mighty power that he was born with. God works in a mysterious way. And he will bless you without consultation. No one can take away what God has in place for you, no matter who you are. What's yours is yours. And that's why Jephthah's siblings had to release what was his. And that was the position of commander in the family. Verse 9 says that Jephthah said to the elders of Gilead, in this section, he's giving them orders. He says, if you bring me home again to fight with the Ammonites, and Yahweh delivers them in my hands. So in this section shows that Jephthah was a mighty man of war, and he was also a God-fearing man, because he brought up the name of Yahweh, because he knew the God that he served. He knew that he could not go to fight the Ammonites without the power and the help of God. In verse 10, it says that the elders of Gilead said to Jephthah, Yahweh will be our witness between us. Surely we'll do what you say. Because of what they had done to him, he had to give them orders and commands. Jephthah had to stand his ground and relay his expectation to the elders of Gilead. Verse 11 reveals that then Jephthah went with the elders of Gilead, and the people made him head and chief over all the inhabitants of Gilead. Jephthah spoke all his words before Yahweh in Mizpah. To those who have been abandoned, rejected, feel unloved, unwanted, secluded from the family, to those who have suffered with finding their positions and identities in their own families, not to exclude myself, do not give up, because God He's a God of restoration and transformation. He restored Jephthah and transformed his reality. Yahweh made sure that those who extricated him from the family came bowing down and actually humbling themselves and begging for help. And they gave up their leadership position so he could go and rescue them from the fight with the Ammonite. If God could restore Jephthah, who was rejected, a mighty man of war who was never wanted in his family, and his father did not even take the time to defend him at the time that he was being rejected from the family, God, he will also restore you. Just hang on, because your time is coming. Thank you so much for tuning in to Healing Victors.